1943, Solomon Sea. I was the corpsman on a small landing team off a warship. Routine job after a storm: go find a missing supply ship. Radio kept fading, compass off, and we spotted an island that wasn't on our route. We went ashore for water and cover. Found prints in the sand, deep, wide, not from any man I ever treated. By the next morning, one of ours was gone. That's when I knew something was out there, present and watching us. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel, and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I will tell it the way I remember. It was 1943, Solomon Sea. Warm water, hot sun, haze that smudged the sky so you couldn't tell where blue ended and gray began. I was Reeves back then, corpsman, a medic riding with a mixed team off a tin can destroyer that stank of oil and coffee and wet laundry. I am old now, hands like rope. I still wake to the smell of wet jungle, and I still hear the breath. You will know the breath when I get there. We were 6. Lieutenant Harris, Navy, one of those quiet ones who wrote everything down and kept his shirt tucked. He felt the weight. You could see it in the set of his jaw when he checked the men before patrol. Sergeant Doyle, Marine, tough as a busted anchor. Said little, watched much. Protective, like a bulldog that tolerated a leash. Blake, a gunner with forearms like tree roots and patience that snapped when things dragged. Mason, our radio man, careful with the set, gentle even. He got jumpy when the radio fizzed and coughed. Ellis, the kid, barely whiskers on his face, eyes sharp, too quick to worry and too proud to admit it. Me, Reeves, the doc. I was there to keep blood inside bellies and air inside lungs, and whatever was broken pointed back the right way. We had a simple job. The ship had taken a beating in storms the week before. There was a small supply ship overdue out of Tulagi after the blow. Fuel, canned stuff, ammo, maybe medical boxes. The brass didn't cry over one lost hull, but they did want to know why and where. So our destroyer nosed around the islands in a slow circle, sniffing, eyes open, keeping the big fights somewhere else. We were the little fish snapping at shadows. On a day that started like any other, we cleaned gear. Salt eats everything. I checked my kit. Bandages dry. Sulfa powder sealed. Morphine syrettes counted and rubber bands not cracked. Doyle ran his thumb along the knife edge, not showing off, just seeing if it still bit. Blake cleaned the action of his gun with a rag that used to be a white sock. Ellis checked canteens and rations. He lined up tins of stew like little soldiers. Mason tested the radio, listened to the static like it had a soul, then nodded. "She's good for now," he said. He said that a lot. He was careful with good. We scanned the sea. We made dumb talk about home. Harris told us about winters back in Maine. Long drives on dark roads where the trees looked like people with their hands up. Nobody laughed. It didn't need a laugh. Blake talked about his sister's baby. Kid's head was all hair, he said. Looked like a coconut with eyes. We smiled at that. Ellis asked what we'd eat when we got home. He wanted pie. Peach or apple, he didn't care which. I said coffee that didn't taste like ship rust. They all agreed to that one. Midday, the haze thickened. The horizon made a dirty line. The sea went from blue to the color of a bruised plum. The air pressed on your chest. We felt it in our bones. Weather. It moved fast out there. When it wanted to, it slammed you flat like a hammer on tin. Orders came down. Secure gear. Stow what wasn't lashed. Tie ourselves when it got bad. Keep eyes on the water for anything that didn't belong. A lifeboat, drifting crates, oil slicks, a mast leaning wrong. The captain's voice on the speaker was calm. It always is until it isn't. I remember the first cold breath of the storm. Not cold like winter, cold like someone shut a door you didn't know was open. The crew battened down. We clipped belts to rails. We braced. We looked at each other and checked buckles and nodded. Harris came down the line. He put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "Keep your kit dry, Doc," he said. I smiled like I could make the ocean obey. By late afternoon, the cloud line looked like a wall of slate. We sat by our packs, helmets on our knees, and watched it eat the sky. Mason tested the radio again and frowned. "She's crackling a little," he said. He didn't like little, but he said it anyway. The sea heaved once, then twice, like a dog shrugging off a fly. Then it stopped playing and got mean. The storm grew fast. Wind hit like a slap. Rain followed like 1,000 thrown nails. It hammered the deck and our helmets and our backs. The destroyer rode low, nose up, nose down, a long, slow bow like a tired horse. Every man was belted or seated and braced. The deck tilted. Water ran in gray sheets. The air smelled of salt and hot metal and fear you didn't speak. The radio faded in and out. Mason hunched over it with his hood up. His lips moved. He talked to the set like it was a child. He banged it once with a knuckle, gentle like a scold. The compass jittered under its glass like a bug in a jar. Men moved in careful steps, feet wide, hands grabbing rail or rope. No show, just work. We got through the ugly middle. Lightning was just far enough to count a few beats. Thunder rolled along our bones. The captain kept us square, or as square as anyone could in water like that. The worst passed after midnight. The rain eased. The wind slid away and sulked. The deck stank of wet rope and oil. We unclipped. The ship creaked like an old house. Toward dawn, the light went thin and washed out. The haze lifted for a blink. That's when Ellis, of all people, saw it first. "Land," he said, eyes narrow, finger pointing off the port bow. We all turned, and there it was. Big, steep hills like shoulders hunched under green. Forest thick enough to look solid, a pale beach line, a curve of cove. It lay there quiet, like it had been waiting. Charts in war are a mess. Islands grow and shrink depending on who mapped them and how honest they were about making guesses. We checked the pocket chart. Nothing right there. Not like that. Could be the paper was old. Could be. We were off by a hair after that beating. Harris stood with the captain and the navigator and looked and didn't say much. The captain rubbed his chin. "We took some damage," he said. "We're tired and low on clean water. That cove might give us a windbreak for a spell. We sent a small team first, eyes on. Quick in, quick out. If we can refill water, maybe snag fuel from any wrecks, redo it." Harris nodded. "My team," he said. We loaded light. Canteens, lines, tarps, a small stove, rations, a few flares. The radio set in Mason's careful hands, swaddled like a baby, guns oiled, knives on belts. We were 6 again. Like always. The ship edged near the wind shadow of the island. We felt the seas calm there, a little. The cutter dropped into dull green water. We climbed down a rope ladder with wet hands and stiff knees and shoved off. "Keep her quick," the captain said from the rail. He didn't have to. We knew. We slid over the small swells. The cove grew bigger, beach rolling toward us. The forest stood up behind the sand like a wall. No smoke, no boats, no huts. No birds cutting air, just the hiss of little waves. "Looks clean," Blake said. He never believed in clean. He just said it when he wanted to. I didn't know it then, but I would remember that quiet more than the storm. Storms make noise. Men make noise. The island did not. It took the noise and buried it like a dog with a bone. We timed the surf and shoved in. The boat teeth rattled on the sand and then we were out, boots sinking in warm grit, pulling the bow up the beach so the next surge didn't snatch it back. Harris put 2 men watching the tree line. Doyle swept left. I swept right. Ella stayed with Mason to help cradle the radio out and keep it high. "Strong surf, but manageable," Doyle said. He said it to himself. He always measured things he might have to fight later. We scanned quick. The beach wore the storm like a coat. Branches, palm fronds, a mess of broken shells, ropes of seaweed, and one long splinter from something that might have once been a boat. Then we saw the crates, Japanese, or what was left of them. Wood swelled and rotted, markings washed thin. One metal strap that had not rusted through hung like a grin. Blake prodded the nearest with his boot and the plank gave like wet bread. Inside, old paper, nothing useful. Further up, there were 2 helmets half buried, the old Japanese shape. One cracked right down the dome. No skull inside. We could smell old iron and mildew. It was from before the last storm, maybe years. No bodies, no fresh ash, no fishing lines, no footprints except our own pushing dark into the pale sand. "Quiet," Harris said. That was just naming a thing we already knew. The forest behind the beach stood in a thick line, vines and roots and palms. The air under those trees looked darker than it should on a bright morning. It wasn't just shade, It was like the green itself drank the light. We set a simple camp. We didn't plan to sleep there, not then, but you always plan to if you must. 2 lean-tos from tarps. A small fire pit scooped down to hide the flame. Ellis set the stew tins and water test kit near me. I tested the creek water that crossed the beach at the north end, slow and brown, coming out from the jungle like a vein. Boil and treat. Don't get fancy. I did the drops and waited. Mason set his radio under the tarp, his hands slow and sure, his face soft and careful like a man pulling a sliver from a child's finger. We walked the line where beach kissed brush. I knelt where the damp sand stayed cool and hard and saw impressions that did not fit the day. Not perfect shapes, not like a cast, but deeper spots where weight had been. Wide, bare, not round like a pig's split hoof, not spread like a crab. Long presses where toes might be, or where something like toes had been. Big. Bigger than my boot by a hand and then some. Look at that, I said, quiet. Doyle crouched beside me. He put his hand near one print, not touching, not wanting to disturb. He squinted. Heavy, he said. Human-ish. Bare, he stood. We're not alone. I felt the back of my neck get tight. We didn't panic. Harris kept it tight. He didn't have to call a huddle. He just made it happen with a look. We hold here for now, he said. We got water to finish testing. We got to report to the ship. We do 2-man watches, change on the hour. No one wanders past the tree line. No one chases noises. Clear? We all said clear. The afternoon trudged. We ate small. We drank careful. We kept glancing at the green like it might breathe. The fire stayed small and mean. Mason talked to the radio. He got the ship, thin and whispery. He told them what we had, maybe water, some wrecked junk, no local scene. He did not say big prints, not yet. You learn what to hold for later. Dusk came fast in that cove. The sky went from white to yellow to bruised. The surf talked more as the air cooled a little. Tropical heat holds on, even when the sun hides. The sand was still warm under my palm. I took first watch with Blake. He wanted to roam. He didn't. Orders were orders. We walked the line slow and steady and counted breaths. It was full dark when I heard the first branch break. Not a twig, a branch half thick as a shovel handle. It snapped, and then something low and heavy left a little rumble. I felt it more than heard it. Like a man with a chest full of wind. I turned my head and saw trees sway one after another, then go still. Not wind. It was too slow for wind and too targeted. We didn't shoot. We didn't even raise our guns all the way. We just watched and let our eyes do their job. Night vision is your own, and it flickers worse when you are scared. The moon hid. The fire threw our shadows long and made the bushes dance. And then the bushes stopped and something else moved. Ellis, on the other side of the camp, hissed a small breath. I saw something, he said. Not loud. Not a shout. He was on watch then with Mason. Tall. Between those 2 trees. Stepped out, stood still, then gone. Animal, Blake said. Don't know, Ellis said. His voice shook and then got steady again. Not a pig. Not a man, I think. Too big. But like a man. We let the night crawl. We changed watch on the hour. Nothing charged the camp. The heavy breath came once more farther back, like a cough muffled by a hand. I hated that it sounded like breath at all. Night let us keep our questions. At dawn, we counted heads, 1 short. We did not yell the name. You learn not to make the jungle echo with your voice. It gives you away, and it feeds the thing that is chewing your gut. Who had last watch on North? Harris asked, eyes moving. Me and Ellis, said Mason. He looked sick. I went to wake Blake. Ellis checked the south side like we said. When I came back, I thought he was tying his boot. I did not see him leave the line. I swear. Ellis stood there pale, hands clenched. He didn't, he said. I went 30 paces to take a leak and keep an eye down the beach. When I came back, I saw his rifle on the ground. We followed sign. You can read sign even if you're a sailor if you've walked green long enough. We saw the drag in the leaf litter where someone had been pulled. Not a straight line. It wove through. The brush showed hand-torn branches at shoulder height for a tall man. The ends threaded and shiny, not cut. We found a bend in a rifle barrel. It looked like a man had tried to curl it around his thigh and then gave up. There were tufts of long, dark hair snagged on a bark scar where something brushed hard. The hair was stiff with mud and sweat and stink, human-like. Not a pig bristle, not dog fur. It was too long for anything I knew in that jungle. Could be locals, Blake said. He said it because he wanted it to be men. Locals didn't bend that barrel, Doyle said. His voice had a scrape in it. A group could drag a man. Sure, but this looks like one. Prints are deep, stride is long. He went upslope. Harris set his jaw. We are not chasing into that without a plan, he said. We tighten the camp. We do a sweep within sight, then back. Call the ship. Tell them we have a missing man. We hold for orders. Doyle's eyes flashed. He didn't like waiting when someone was gone. Higher ground, he said. Better sightlines. This is a kill bowl. We move to the rocks near that headland. We can make them come uphill. Not yet, Harris said. We stay until we talk to the ship. Mason fought the radio. The storm had messed with everything. The set breathed and sighed and then coughed up a voice like a ghost. He said our call sign and the simple truth: missing man, big prints, dragging sign, possible hostile locals. He did not say giant. No one did. You don't say it even if you think it. You find other words and you hold the rest in your teeth. We did our sweep and found more. A small old dugout half collapsed under vines, a place where someone once lived or hid. Inside it was a notebook, paper swollen, pages stuck. Japanese writing, short entries with dates that looked pre-war and then early war. I could not read it, but I knew the shape of a man's worry in a journal even if the words were not mine. There were lines and then gaps and then small hard characters that looked like warnings. Harris flipped through and pointed at a page with a rough sketch. Hills. A line of march like eyes. He nodded. They wrote about patrols lost inland, he said, voice thin. Something they call mountain people. The note next to the coastal line says, stay near the sea. Smart, Doyle said. We argued softly. Harris wanted to keep position, send updates, and wait for orders or a boat. Doyle wanted to move to those rocks, get a better angle, force any watcher to come up in the open. He wasn't wrong. None of it felt right. We compromised because that is what men do when there isn't a perfect choice. We stayed on the beach, but we shifted the camp tighter, close to a palm cluster and a drift log as big as a truck. We cleared more lines of fire. We cut brush to make the edge cleaner, not too much, just enough. We stacked stones waist-high to break silhouettes. We set trip lines with little cans to chatter if something pushed through. We put the boat where we could shove it back, but not too near the surf where one big set could steal it. Night fell slower. The air felt heavier. I wrote in my head the way I still do. Do not run if you cannot see where to run. That kind of thing. We sat small around the low fire and let it burn down more. I checked our water, refilled with treatment. Blake stared at the tree line like he could catch it breathing. Ellis rubbed his neck with a shaking hand and tried to stop. Mason cleaned the radio contacts with cloth that smelled like spirits. Doyle sharpened his knife with slow, quiet scrapes that sounded too loud. It came from deep inland near midnight. A call, long, low, carried slow across the folds of green. Not a bird, not a pig, not anything we knew. It had chest in it. It had sorrow. It had warning. It faded and left the air shaken. We did not fire. Guns don't stop a sound. We waited. We moved near a creek at dusk the next day. The air by water was cooler, under canopy air that fogged your breath when you exhaled slow. We went in a wedge with Harris in front, Mason behind him with the radio, Ellis tight to my shoulder, Blake to the left, and Doyle bringing up the rear, walking backward every few steps like a fox. I smelled it first. Blood, not old. Fresh enough to make your mouth water in a bad way. Iron and heat and meat. We froze, then stepped careful. The creek deepened and curved, and on the inside bend lay a pig. Big, wild thing. Ribs pried open like a book. Broken, not cut. One leg twisted clean out of the ball like someone had spun it until it popped. The guts were half gone, pulled with hands, not chewed. Flies clouded up like smoke. The mud around it showed prints and palms. I saw the smear where a big hand had slid on a trunk, fingers spread, mud-caked, chest height to a tall man. I put my hand next to it and felt small. Something moved in the brush beyond. not fast. Normal. Comfortably normal, if normal was a word you could apply to any of this. We peered through vines and saw him. I say him because it was built like a man more than anything else. Big, broad shoulders, back like a barrel with hair stuck in wet mats, arms hung long but not ape-long, head square, face shadowed by mud and leaves, bulky. Crawford-scale man plus half again. He crouched over the pig carcass. He pulled a strip of meat with 2 hands and put it to his mouth and chewed with side teeth. His breath made small white puffs. That is what I remember most from that first clean look. The short bursts of breath in the cool creek air. A machine does not make that. A ghost does not. A man does. A big one. We did not step. We did not talk. A twig snapped under someone's boot. I don't know whose. Maybe mine. The head turned. The brow came up like a question. The mouth opened a little. I saw small teeth in front, big ones in back. He looked at us for a heartbeat and then he ran. Not upright like a parade. Low, forward, hands pushing brush, feet churning ground. He moved strong, like a man who knew every root and rock and didn't care about either. He disappeared into green like a couch swallowed by a tent. We held fire. Too much cover. Friendlies too near. You don't shoot at movement in jungle unless you want to explain to a mother why her boy died from a friend's bullet. We walked the spot after, halfway to make ourselves believe we weren't scared. Fresh prints in mud. A trunk marked by palm smears at my chest. The pig's ribs bent, not cut. Blake touched one with his knuckle and hissed at the heat. It had been alive not long ago. Now it was a buffet for something with hands. Back at camp, we talked less. We made the perimeter meaner, more light at the edges, trip lines tighter. Sleeping areas tight as a spooned couple. Harris made us lay packs near our feet and guns across chests. We rotated watch in pairs, no single man alone, not anymore. Heavy steps circled out past the cans during the dark hours. Not close at first, they stayed where our weak light stopped. Once the cans chattered and then went quiet, and I thought I saw a knee, or a shape the height of a knee, slide from shadow to shadow. I smelled wet hair. Like a dog, but different, muskier. Human in the worst way. Something out there wanted us to know it was there. But it did not want holes in its hide, not yet. It started with pebbles. Late night, maybe a bit past midnight. We heard a tick on the drift log. Then another. Little stones tossed from the dark. Not hard, not to hurt. To say I am here without words. Then the stones got bigger. A fist-sized rock thumped in sand near Ellis's boot, and his breath caught and snapped out. Jesus, he said, no louder than a prayer. I put my hand on his arm. Hold, I said. A rush hit the tarp corner next. Not a full body. A quick shove. It snapped the corner line and spilled our gear. A roll of bandage unspooled and vanished into shadows. Blake swore like you swear when you stub a toe and lose patience with the universe. He started to stand. No, Harris said. Wait until you have a target. There was another push, a little closer, and then I heard a hiss of breath through teeth, not ours. I put my knee to the ground and brought my gun up slow, muzzle down until I was certain. A shape broke the line of black where the brush made a notch. It was big enough to fill the notch. It moved just once, like a question mark raising its head. Now, Harris said, and one shot cracked. Muzzle flash carved a white slit into night. The shape flinched and went. We heard brush slap back. Hit, Blake said. Don't know, Harris said. We waited. 2 minutes. 10. Time stretched. Then the second rush. This one fast and low from the side, where our line of cans had a gap we hadn't seen. It hit like a wrecking ball. It clipped Blake and carried him 3-4 feet before the others swarmed and yanked him back. He screamed once and then held it in like a man biting a belt. We fired then, short, controlled, at shapes that were more bush than body. There was a howl, not a human cry, not an animal one, a sound that made the hair stand on my arms. It wasn't pain alone, it was anger at being touched by fire. The rush ended as quick as it began. We dragged Blake inside the little ring of packs and men and tarp. I put my hands on him, ribs mushy under skin, bruise rising like oil, breath wet. His eyes were wide. Doc, he said, a simple sound, not begging, just naming me like a tool he knew might help. I did what I could. It was not enough. Some injuries you can mend, some you hold and wait with. This was the second kind. We sat with him through the night. He went in a quiet way, teeth clenched, not wanting to make noise to bring them back. He died with his eyes on the tarp roof. I closed them with my thumb. I put my hand on his chest a long moment. That is a habit I never lost, not even after the war. You press once. You mark the moment. You tell yourself the world will keep going and you have to go with it whether you want to or not. That was the point we decided the beach was a coffin. We can't hold here, Doyle said. They know our angles. They'll keep testing until one of us makes a mistake. We need stone around us. Harris nodded. We moved to that rocky outcrop. I saw a cave mouth in the cove wall when we came in. It looked dry. If there were locals or patrols before us, they used it. Pack what you can carry. Leave what slows you. We move now. We shouldered the packs. We left the stove. We left the extra tarp. We took water, ammo, the radio, the notebook, and the small stuff you take when you think you might not come back. We carried Blake's dog tag and nothing else. You don't leave a body unless you must. We must. The surf would take him if the things didn't. Either way, this island ate what found it. We moved in a hunched line. Night let us be small. We went for the dark shapes of the rocks. The cave mouth yawned like a cut in the cove wall. Inside it was cool and dry. Old boot prints and dust. Not fresh. 2 rusted canteens in a corner, stamped with a star that did not belong to us. A lantern broken near the base, the glass dull with age. Scratches along the wall at shoulder height, like big hands had slid along feeling the way. The cave breathed old air that tasted like stone and guano and damp rope. We set up in there, a small huddle with backs to stone and eyes to the opening. We spoke low. We made a simple plan. At first light, we would try to cut inland through the hills and see if the cave connected through. We had one chance. The beach was a shooting gallery. The water was a coin toss. The cave at least had one way in, maybe another out. I lay down for my hour and closed my eyes. I did not sleep. I listened. Out in the night, a stone clacked against another stone, then another. A pattern. Calls spaced short and then long. Signals. Not birds. Not echo tricks. Harris raised the finger. We held our breath and counted the beats. He nodded to himself like a man doing math on a slate with chalk he didn't want to show the class. We were the ones being counted. Dawn in a cave is not a sunrise. It's just darkness that turns thinner. Shapes show edges. The opening becomes a lighter mouth. Outside, something called, closer than before, and another answered from the hills behind. Short, spaced, like hunters keeping tabs. There was no joy in it. It was a work sound. We were their work. We move, Harris said. Mason up front with me. Keep that radio dry. Reeves, you and Ellis in the middle. Doyle on rear. Keep your feet under you. If I drop, Mason takes point. If Doyle drops, I call it no hero runs. Slow and steady. We stepped into the back of the cave. The tunnel narrowed. The walls were cool and wet. Our breath fogged. We used hands more than eyes. We went where the air moved faintest, a sign of an opening. The stone under my palm felt scratched, not by tools, but by hands. Fingertips had raked dirt there long ago. My mind made pictures I didn't want. Behind us, stones skittered. Not the small drip of cave pebbles, a foot or a hand pushing a loose bit that pinwheeled and clicked away. We stopped. The air listened with us. Go, Doyle said from the back. Don't turn. His voice was quiet steel. We went. There was a tight place where the tunnel pinched. Harris squeezed through sideways. Mason followed, using his elbow and knee in words like prayer. The radio scraped and I wanted to kill the sound in my throat. I pushed Ellis through by his pack straps. He scrambled, boots kicking, then popped free like a cork. I had one shoulder in when I heard the breath behind. The same breath I had heard by the pig. Close, now. The hand of the cave wall was at my cheek, damp and cold. The breath was at my neck, warm and big. I did not look back. Doyle came to the pinch and stopped. I saw his eyes over my shoulder. Calm. Angry in a father way, not a fighter way. He shook his head once and mouthed, "Move." I moved. I slid through, stone biting my ribs. My pack snagged, and I ripped the strap. I stumbled into Ellis, and we both went to a knee. I caught myself, turned, and saw it. An arm reached into the pinch, hair matted with mud, skin dark with soil and sun, fingers thick, nails broken and black. It slid along the wall and grabbed for Doyle's shirt. Doyle took his rifle by the barrel and jammed the butt into that arm with 2 hands, all his body behind it. The arm jerked back, more surprised than hurt. Then Doyle did a thing I still see when I close my eyes. He pulled the small charge he had taped under his belt for just such a work and kicked it under a lip of stone by the pinch. He shoved himself through as he thumbed the striker and pulled, a smooth old hand move like lighting a cigarette in the rain. The fuse spit and hissed like a snake. Doyle turned his back to the blast and spread himself over us like a blanket. Down, he said, and we ate rock. The pop wasn't big. It didn't need to be. The pinch was thin. The charge chewed the wall and dropped it. The passage collapsed in a cough of dust and chips and a deep animal sound that might have been stone or might have been something else. The dust blinded us. The breath behind cut off like someone had closed the door. Rocks thudded against Doyle's back. One big fragment hit his shoulder and he bit a grunt in half. When the dust settled, we coughed and spat grit. Doyle lay on his side, face gray, lips black with dust mud. His left leg was bad from the thigh down, pinned under a chunk of stone he could not feel yet. We used hands and pry bars and curses. We got the rock off him, but the leg was wrong. Angles where there should not be angles. Blood seeped slow from a line that looked like the mouth of a fish. He looked at me and I shook my head because I do not lie in a cave when men I care about are watching. He knew anyway. "Go," he said. "Harris, you get them out. You hear me?" "We're not leaving you," Harris said. "Yes, you are," Doyle said. "Listen, they'll dig through. That bought you time, not safety. I can slow them more if I have to. I can't run. I can't fight and move. You know this. You know me. Don't make me say it twice." Harris closed his eyes once like a man walking into wind. He opened them and looked to me. "We have moments where rank and job meet and both men shout. In those you do what will keep the others breathing." I nodded once. It felt like swallowing a nail. We made Doyle as small pain as we could, wrapped his leg tight, gave him enough to make the edge dull but not take his mind. He refused more. "I need my head," he said. He checked his charges. He checked his knife. He checked his jaw and set it hard. We moved. We took the left-leaning branch where the air seemed a little cooler. The tunnel sloped down, then up, then down again. It was not a straight run. Time slowed to a crawl with feet. After a bit, the light grew and the sound of water washed in thin from somewhere ahead. We came to an opening tight with vines. We pushed through and squinted at morning. The far shore. A small cove that looked like a twin of the other but quieter and clearer. Driftwood piled like bones. A tongue of pale sand. The water beyond went a blue that hurt my eyes after the dark. Across the cove, the tree line stood like a line of men. From that green shade, a figure watched. Tall, still, shoulders like the posts of a fence. It stood there with the patience of a fisherman, and then it stepped back into the green, and the green ate it. We didn't cheer. We didn't talk. We stood with the sun on our faces and tasted fear and sun salt, and felt nothing like victory. Behind us, deep in the rock, something hammered. The cave remembers to you later when you are safe, not in the moment when you cannot afford to understand. We had nothing like a boat. We had driftwood and rope from our packs and hands. Harris looked at the small cove and the water beyond it, and then at us. "We build a raft," he said. His voice was plain. "We shove off on the morning water. We hug the cove mouth, and then we get clear, pray for a patrol. We lash logs. We used our belts and line and the straps we hadn't torn. We kept it simple. A cross frame, a top layer, a couple of planks for paddles. It looked like a thing a child would scrawl if he was asked to draw a boat. It would float, maybe. That was all we asked. At the edge of the trees, 2 figures showed and stood in the shade. They were not curious. They were assessing. They did not enter the water. They watched with the steady lack of hurry that makes your spine cold. We worked and tried not to look, and looked anyway. Their heads nearly brushed a low palm frond. They had hair where men do, and hair where men don't. Mud painted them in plates that shifted when they breathed. They were too far for faces, but close enough for the way their hands worked. One opened and closed a fist slow, like remembering the feel of a neck in it. We pushed off just after the sun shoved clear of the hills. The raft dipped and then held. We slid on our bellies and paddled with broken planks. The water was kind there at the mouth. It lifted and set us, and then lifted and set us again. The figures watched and did not follow. They paced the tree line. They did not like the sea, or they did not trust it. I did not question gifts. Out past the cove, the ocean took us. The island fell behind like a big sleeping bag under a green blanket. The sun burned the top of our heads. Lips cracked. We rationed sips. We did turns. We spoke in soft voices about the men we had left. We said nothing dumb like if or maybe. We said, when we tell his people, and when they ask, I will say his name first. This is how you carry, with words simple as stones. By night we were cooked and half drowsy and still moving, the raft creaking like an old door hinge. A shark slid under us once, shadowed the size of a truck bed, and never came up. I watched stars I did not know and thought of little pieces of my life back then. A tin cup in a galley, a shirt that fit better after a month of sweat, a woman in San Diego who cut my hair and laughed when I told a joke that wasn't funny. Men keep small things to keep from breaking. On the second day, an Allied patrol loped across the horizon, ugly and beautiful, a little ship throwing wake like a farm dog wagging its tail. We waved cloth like idiots. We yelled with the last of our voices. They saw us. They swung in and hauled us aboard with hands that smelled like rope and tobacco and ship paint. Someone put a tin cup to my lips. It was water that tasted like God. We told it. We told it clean. Hostile group inland. Big, strong. Moved at night. Threw rocks to test. Ate meat raw and bent metal with hands. Dragged a man without noise. We showed the hair. We showed prints drawn on a ration wrapper. We showed the bent rifle we had made sure to bring like a relic. We gave the Japanese notebook and pointed at lines we could not read but could feel. The officer who took the notes nodded and said, "Copy," and wrote. He asked the right things. What height? What smell? What sound? How many? We gave him what we had. He said he would pass it up. He did. I saw the paper leave his hand and go into the man's hand, 2 ranks up. That paper found a file. That file went into a drawer. War moves like a tide. It goes where the orders say. It does not go to nameless coves on uncharted edges when there are big fights to feed. They made a mark on a big map with a grease pencil. Someone else erased it later when the plastic cover got cleaned. The chart stayed incomplete. The cove didn't mind. Years later, long after I traded my kit for a small house and a quiet job patching drunks and carpenters, I woke sometimes with that sound in my chest. A long call, low and spaced, not animal, not bird, a work sound. I made coffee and watched the dark window become a mirror and then a square of morning, and I put my hand on the table and felt for stone under it. We told it. We did not lie. Men laughed sometimes when we told it, soft, like they were embarrassed for us. Other men did not laugh. They looked past your shoulder like they were counting trees. When they asked what they were, I shrugged. People want names the way they want fences. We had none. Mountain people fit as well as anything. Not spirit, not a ghost, not a story for kids. People. Big, strong. Night hunters. They breathed like men. They bled when cut. They tested you. If you were smart, you left them the dark. I am old now. I have told this to young men who drink by a fire and think war's sharp edges and banners. I tell them it is water and heat and weight and breath. I tell them it is the sound of rocks in the night and the way your friend's hand spreads when he tells you to go and you go because that is what keeps 4 men alive. I tell them this because no one else will. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.